Have you ever wondered what the wildest places on Earth actually look like? I did. So I went looking. What I found were 14 places so extreme, so strange, and so completely off the radar that most people will live their entire lives without knowing they exist. These are not the places on postcards. These are the places that make geologists argue, that make explorers go quiet, and that make everyone who sees them in person say the same thing. I had no idea the Earth could do this. Let's go. We're starting in Kansas, and I know what you're thinking. Kansas isn't exactly famous for dramatic landscapes, but 70 million years ago, this state didn't exist. None of the American Midwest did. What was here instead was something called the Western Interior Seaway, a vast inland ocean stretching from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to the Arctic, splitting the continent clean in two. When that sea retreated, it left behind a thick blanket of chalky sediment on the floor of what would become Kansas. Over the next 70 million years, wind and rain carved that sediment into what you're looking at right now. 70-foot towers of compressed ancient ocean, rising out of the Great Plains like monuments to a world that no longer exists. The Kansas Geological Survey describes Monument Rocks as one of the most significant geological landmarks in the United States. Fossils of giant mosasaurs, marine reptiles over 15 feet long, have been found embedded in these walls. And yet admission is free. The site is completely unguarded. You can drive up, get out, and put your hand on 70 million years of Earth history. Most days, there's nobody else there. This canyon has existed for thousands of years, but for most of that time, it was completely hidden. The Jokla River ran through it at full force, deep, fast, and gray with glacial silt. Nobody knew what was underneath. Then, in 2009, a hydroelectric dam upstream diverted most of the river's flow. The water level dropped, and for the first time in recorded history, Stuðlagil Canyon was revealed. What emerged were some of the most perfectly formed basalt columns on the planet. Hundreds of them hexagonal pillars of ancient volcanic rock, formed when lava cooled slowly and contracted into near-perfect geometric shapes millions of years ago. In 2017, a single photograph by Icelandic photographer Albertina Kristjansdóttir went viral. Within months, the canyon went from a geological curiosity known only to locals to one of the most sought-after destinations in Iceland. The turquoise color of the water isn't a filter. It comes from glacial minerals suspended in the river flow, a phenomenon called glacial milk. Getting there still requires a river crossing on foot. No bridge, no parking lot. Just you, the water, and something that looks like it was designed by a mathematician who also happened to be a god. For 800 years, the Reykjanes Peninsula in southwest Iceland was quiet. Geologically speaking, that was unusual. The peninsula sits directly on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the seam where the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart. It's one of the most geologically active zones on the planet. But for 8 centuries, the volcanoes here slept. On March 19, 2021, the ground cracked open. What followed was one of the most accessible volcanic eruptions in modern history. Fagradalsfjall sits just 30 kilometers from Reykjavik. Within days of the eruption beginning, thousands of Icelanders and tourists were hiking out to watch it standing within meters of active lava flows. The eruption paused in September 2021, restarted in 2022, and erupted again in 2023. According to the Icelandic Met Office, scientists believe the peninsula has entered a new volcanic period that could last decades or centuries. This is the Earth doing what it has always done, making itself, remaking itself, entirely indifferent to who's watching. There is a place in central Turkey where the landscape looks like it was designed for a fantasy novel, and the humans who live there carved their homes directly into the rock. Cappadocia's famous fairy chimneys, the tall, tapered stone towers that cover the valleys here, were formed by a 2-stage geological process spanning millions of years. First, A series of massive volcanic eruptions blanketed the region in thick deposits of tuff, a soft, porous volcanic rock. Then, over millions of years, wind and water eroded the softer stone around harder basalt caps, leaving these pointed towers standing in the valleys like sentinels. What makes Cappadocia extraordinary beyond its geology is what humans did with it. Starting around the 4th century CE, early Christian communities fleeing persecution carved entire cities into the soft tuff. Underground cities at Derinkuyu and Pamukkale descend 11 stories below ground, complete with ventilation shafts, water wells, kitchens, and churches capable of sheltering up to 20,000 people. UNESCO inscribed Gurame National Park as a World Heritage Site in 1985, citing its unique combination of natural and human-made history. There are few places on Earth where geology and human ingenuity have produced something this extraordinary together. Most rivers flow to the sea. The Okavango doesn't. Rising in the highlands of Angola, the Okavango River travels 1,200 kilometers southeast, and then, instead of reaching the ocean, it floods out across the Kalahari Desert and simply stops. The water spreads into a vast inland delta, covering up to 15,000 square kilometers. No outlet, no sea. It just floods the desert, sustains one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth, and then evaporates. UNESCO inscribed the Okavango Delta as a World Heritage Site in 2014, describing it as one of the very few major interior delta systems in the world that does not flow into a sea or ocean. The delta supports over 500 species of birds, 130 species of fish, and some of the last large elephant populations on the African continent, estimated at over 130,000 individuals by the 2022 KAZ Elephant Survey. Every year, the flood arrives. Every year, the desert becomes an ocean. Every year, millions of animals move with it. It is one of the greatest migrations of life on Earth, and it happens in a country most people couldn't point to on a map. There is an island in Indonesia where the apex predator is a lizard that has been on this Earth for 4 million years and hasn't needed to change. The Komodo dragon, Varanus komodoensis, grows up to 3 meters long and can weigh over 70 kilograms. It is the world's largest living lizard. It hunts deer, pigs, and water buffalo. There are verified records of Komodo dragons killing adult water buffalo animals that weigh up to 1,000 kilograms through a combination of physical attack and venom. For decades, scientists believed the dragon's lethality came purely from bacteria in its saliva. A 2009 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences overturned that. Researchers at the University of Melbourne confirmed that Komodo dragons have functional venom glands producing anticoagulant compounds. Fewer than 4,000 Komodo dragons remain in the wild. They exist only on Komodo Island, Rinca, and a handful of smaller Indonesian islands. The island itself is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the few places on Earth where you can watch a prehistoric apex predator hunt in its natural habitat. From a distance, Pamukkale looks like a mountainside covered in fresh snow. Walk towards it, and you realize it's the middle of summer in southern Turkey, and what you're standing on is warm. Pamukkale's terraces are made of travertine, a form of limestone deposited by 17 natural hot springs that have been flowing from this hillside for at least 14,000 years. The water emerges from the ground at 35 degrees Celsius, saturated with calcium bicarbonate. As it flows down the hillside and hits the air, carbon dioxide is released, and calcium carbonate precipitates out, building the terraces millimeter by millimeter, pool by pool. The ancient Greeks and Romans knew about Pamukkale. Directly above the terraces sit the ruins of Hierapolis, a Roman spa city founded in 190 BCE, built specifically to take advantage of the hot springs. The site's thermal baths, temples, and a vast necropolis are still standing. UNESCO inscribed Pamukkale and Hierapolis together in 1988. The site draws nearly 2 million visitors per year. Yet somehow, at the right hour of the morning, with the right light, the terraces still look like no one has ever been here before. There is a region in Central Asia where 4 of the world's great mountain ranges collide: the Himalayas, the Karakoram, the Hindu Kush, the Tian Shan. The point where they all converge is called the Pamir Plateau, and it has been known for centuries as the roof of the world. The average elevation of the Pamir Plateau is over 4,000 meters above sea level. Its highest peak, Ismoil Somoni, formerly known as Communism Peak, reaches 7,495 meters. The plateau is so high and so remote that significant portions of it remained unmapped by Western cartographers until the late 19th century. The Pamir Highway, officially the M41, runs for over 2,000 kilometers through this landscape. Built partly by Soviet engineers in the 1930s, it is consistently ranked among the most extreme roads on Earth. Sections of it follow the ancient Silk Road trade routes, paths that merchants, soldiers, and explorers have walked for over 2,000 years. Marco Polo wrote about the Pamirs in 1271. He described the plateau as the highest place in the world, where fire burned less brightly than in the lowlands. An early, intuitive observation of altitude's effect on oxygen. The Pamirs have barely changed since he wrote those words. At 4,400 meters above sea level in the Apurimac region of Peru, there is a landscape that locals call the Stone Forest. It doesn't appear in most travel guides. It doesn't have a visitor center. To reach it, you drive through the town of Pampachiri, a small community in one of Peru's most remote departments, and climb into a landscape that feels like it exists outside of time. These formations are earth pillars, a geological structure formed when harder caprock protects softer underlying sediment from erosion. Over tens of thousands of years, wind and water erode everything around the protected columns, leaving them standing in isolation. The Quechua people of the region have lived alongside this landscape for centuries. Local oral tradition gives individual names to the most distinctive formations and weaves them into community mythology. It receives fewer than a few hundred foreign visitors per year. No entrance fee, no tour operator required. Just you, the altitude, and a landscape that looks like it was sculpted by wind and myth in equal measure. In the western Rhodope Mountains of Bulgaria, a river once carved its way through limestone for thousands of years. But in one particular place, the river didn't just cut through the rock. It tunneled beneath it, leaving a natural stone bridge overhead that spans 45 meters across the gorge. Locals call it Bozhiya, Most Gods Bridge. The Rhodope Mountains are one of Europe's most cave-dense regions. The limestone here has been dissolving and reshaping for millions of years. The same process that formed the bridge also created the nearby Trigrad Gorge and the Devil's Throat Cave, a cave so deep that the Arda River disappears into it and reappears nearly 400 meters away. Thracian tribes crossed this bridge 4,000 years ago. Roman soldiers crossed it during their campaigns through the Balkans. Medieval Bulgarians built myths around it. And today, you can walk across it for free, often completely alone, and feel the entire weight of that history beneath your feet. Antarctica is not a place. It's a fact about this planet that most people haven't fully absorbed. It is the coldest, driest, windiest, and highest continent on Earth. Its average elevation, 2,300 meters, makes it the highest continent by mean altitude. Its ice sheet averages 2,160 meters thick. Underneath that ice, there are mountain ranges, lakes, and valleys that have been sealed from the surface for 35 million years. The lowest temperature ever recorded on Earth's surface was measured here, minus 89.2 degrees Celsius at the Soviet Vostok station on July 21st, 1983. For context, That is cold enough to freeze carbon dioxide into dry ice. Antarctica has no permanent human population, no indigenous people, no government. It is governed by the Antarctic Treaty System, signed by 54 countries, which designates it as a scientific preserve, free from military activity. 700 million years ago, Antarctica was at the equator. It drifted south over millions of years, glaciated, and became what you're looking at now. It is the most alone place on this planet. And it is this planet's last true wilderness. James Cameron's production design team for Avatar didn't invent the floating Hallelujah Mountains. They photographed them. Zhangjiajie's quartz sandstone pillars began forming roughly 300 million years ago, when the region was a shallow sea. Over millions of years, the seafloor was compressed into rock, lifted by tectonic activity, and then eroded by wind and water into more than 3,000 individual pillar formations, some reaching over 1,100 meters in height. The park covers 436 square kilometers and supports over 3,000 species of plants, including many found nowhere else on Earth. UNESCO designated it a global geopark in 2004. The Stuðlagil people have lived in these mountains for over 2,000 years. They did not need James Cameron to tell them this place was extraordinary. This is what happens when a river can't keep up with the earth rising beneath it. Millions of years ago, the San Juan River wound lazily across a flat coastal plain, creating the slow, looping meanders you can trace from above. Then, the Colorado Plateau began to rise, slowly. Over millions of years, the river should have shifted course. Instead, it kept cutting downward at exactly the same rate the land rose, carving these meanders 1,000 feet into solid rock rather than abandoning them. Geologists call this process stream incision, driven by base-level change. The Goosenecks are considered one of the finest examples of entrenched meanders on Earth and have been used in university geology curricula worldwide. The canyon is 1,000 feet deep. The river travels 5 miles in a straight-line distance of 1 mile. Admission, $5. 15 visitors on a busy day, and a view that most of the world has never seen. We end where the food chain is the most honest. Katmai National Park in southern Alaska covers over 4 million acres of wilderness. At its heart is Brooks Falls, a 1-meter waterfall on the Brooks River, which, for a few weeks every July, becomes the single greatest wildlife spectacle in North America. Katmai is home to over 2,200 brown bears. During the peak of the sockeye salmon run, when millions of fish swim upstream to spawn, the bears congregate at Brooks Falls to feed. A single bear can consume 30 salmon in a day, gaining up to 4 kilograms of fat to survive the winter. This is what the Earth looks like when humans stay out of the way. 14 places, 1 planet, the same one you live on. Tell me in the comments. And if this video made you see the world a little differently, that's what it was made for.